Hello, and welcome to the DC Overlord channel. I am the DC Overlord, and today we are discussing my pitch, my ideas for a Wonder Woman, the animated series, as if it were to be similar to Superman and Batman, the animated series. So, I went episode by episode, planning out an animated series. Of course, this is just for fun. This is not really serious, but at the same time, I kind of would love to see these kind of ideas come to life. Kind of see this, like these types of storylines, really fleshed out, and I think it'll be really interesting. So let's just dive right in because we're covering about 3 seasons worth of episodes. So this is like the complete show, what I would do, where I would bring this. So let's get into it. First, we have part 1 of the episode 1, or season 1, episode 1, the pilot episode of part 1. This would be a 3-part episode. So this is going to be a 3-part episode, and this is part 1. So this is kind of like the last son of Krypton almost, where in part 1 we would focus on Themyscira. We would focus on showing Diana's origin story, her being birthed from clay, and then ultimately having, her grow up, showing her grow up on the island, showing her becoming the champion of the Amazons, showing her as truly like emerging to eventually become Wonder Woman. And then the episode part 1 would probably end with Steve Trevor crashing into the island, and we would kind of go from there. Part 2 would really focus on Diana and Steve, as Steve, crashing into the island brings Wonder Woman into the public modern world. So it would be a modern setting, modern world. And he brings her to New York and kind of introduces her to man's world and kind of shows her around the New York City or maybe some other cities, but like specifically like Manhattan, and just showing Diana the modern New York, the modern world. And so kind of Diana just getting her grips, getting her like, a grasp on things. She probably would have like kind of just a small conflict, nothing too big, nothing major. Like all of this is just setting up Wonder Woman as a character. And so it's going to be really important to kind of show her evolving into Wonder Woman, evolving into that character, and becoming that ambassador for Themyscira. Then part 3, she would meet Barbara and Minerva, an archaeologist who's very curious, very interested in studying Africa and its culture. And Diana would really become close friends with Barbara, and maybe even a little bit more than close friends. I think they would have kind of this like romantic tension of like, will they, won't they, kind of Diana trying to find herself in her own identity, and even bonding so closely with Barbara and Minerva. And I don't think we show the origin of Cheetah quite yet, because I think that would be a much better play when it comes in later, when we finally see her become Cheetah. But we would start with her kind of just having this fascinating curiosity. Maybe we would kind of start with kind of like a lesser known Wonder Woman villain. Like, wouldn't be like a huge villain, because we would be mainly setting up this Barbara and Minerva becoming Cheetah. Maybe we would show hints of like Barbara kind of like craving that power, kind of being almost jealous of Wonder Woman's abilities and her her powers and wanting to be like Wonder Woman, kind of looking up to her as a role model. And maybe she even shares with Diana kind of the studies that she's been kind of looking into the African studies, and saying like this is like something that she's like really passionate about. She wants to go on an expedition. She wants to go on this journey. And really, this whole pilot episode would be really focusing on kind of just building the world of Wonder Woman. Just introducing Etta Candy, introducing Steve Trevor, introducing all these really important characters that are going to end up becoming huge down the line. And then, for the first true episode, after all that's set up, after all that payoff, we get Mind Over Matter. Mind Over Matter would be a Dr. Psycho introduction. So we would be the first sight of Dr. Psycho, and it would really be Wonder Woman struggling with a mental battle between Dr. Psycho and Diana. Maybe he would make her see something. Maybe he would make her. Maybe he would take control of one of her friends. There's kind of a few different paths that you could go about. But either way, Diana has to fight Dr. Psycho in a non-traditional manner. Because really it would be more of a mental battle between the two. Who has the stronger fortitude? Who has the ability to fight him mentally? There'd be very much a psychological battle as much as it is a actual battle. Like, yes, of course, she would kind of, like, fight him physically, but it would ultimately be her mental fortitude that would have to come in strong and be able to get her out of that situation. Be able to make her, be able to overcome Dr. Psycho's influences and put him in his place, put him in jail, put him in prison. Then, then the next episode would be the big experiment. Literally the big experiment. Because we would be introducing Giganta in this episode. We would kind of show her, like, maybe just as a normal person, experimenting with this, like, just experimenting with this, like, scientific experiment or something within the lab, makes her grow big. And eventually, Wonder Woman would have to fight Giganta, because Giganta would obviously use the power to try to, like, do bad things. Like, maybe rob a bank, maybe, she wouldn't be a good person. So, definitely see that battle between Wonder Woman and Giganta. Definitely would be a fun thing to do, especially in the first season. Now, the next episode would be Ancient History, which would be a focused episode on Medusa. So Medusa would be the main villain for this episode. It would kind of, you could honestly use this as kind of a flashback to like a younger Diana and her learning about the tales of Medusa, or maybe even showing Hippolyta struggling against Medusa and ultimately having to send her to hell or something. I don't know. But the other half of it would be Wonder Woman battling a returned Medusa coming back to life and endangering the people of New York or something. And the Wonder Woman has to fight her, so she ties the lasso around her eyes, of course, to make sure that she can't turn to stone. And she would ultimately be fighting Medusa. And ultimately, she would have to make that decision to behead Medusa. Because there's no other way to stop her. Then, season 1, I don't know if this is a season 1, episode 8 type of episode. But I think introducing the concept of Hades. Kind of giving maybe Wonder Woman some sort of excuse to go into hell. Learning about Hades, for example, maybe there's like a zombie horde or something, like maybe there's like undead bodies like coming back to life, and then Wonder Woman has to come has to get to the bottom of the situation. She goes to Hades. She ultimately has to maybe fight Hades, maybe not fight Hades. Maybe there's another problem. Maybe she has to work with Hades. I think basically just bringing that Hades character back and really kind of fleshing him out and showing what Hades can really do as a character. You know, maybe he doesn't have to be a villain, but he certainly should have a presence in the Wonder Woman animated series. Then we have Apex Predator. Season 1, Episode 9, Apex Predator, would be the first introduction of Cheetah. And during this episode, Wonder Woman wouldn't know who Cheetah is. She would just know that this person, this cat-like woman, is trying to attack her, trying to kill her. And I think Wonder Woman would find out during the process that, no, this is not just any person. This is Barbara Ann Minerva. And Wonder Woman obviously would be devastated by this, because it's like, this is her friend, this is her lover. And now they're at blows with each other. And, you know, Diana has to make this tough decision to take Cheetah down and has to fight her. That she can't just let her go. Especially when Cheetah is like murdering other people, obviously she can't just let her go freely. And of course Diana wants to help her, but ultimately she would have to stop her. And showing that dynamic of going from lovers, friends, to enemies, and having to start this rivalry, and even discovering maybe sort of how Barbara Ann Minerva became Cheetah. Like, maybe she kind of reads up on the legend of the African plant, and she discovers that this is a curse. Cheetah was cursed by this plant god or whatever, and this is how, you know, Barbara Ann Minerva was turned. And maybe Diana then thinks, okay, well then maybe I can change Cheetah. Maybe I can help her. Maybe all I have to do is just lift this curse. But ultimately she would still have to take down her friend and lover. And maybe she would even promise to try to help Cheetah. Try to make her pure again. Heal her again. Then you would have kind of just a fun episode, The Abominable Snowman, focusing on one of Wonder Woman's like more obscure villains. I don't really have an idea for Blue Snowman, but I think it would just be fun to just have like an episode that kind of just focuses on her or him, or it doesn't really matter the gender, but ultimately it's just kind of having that little fun episode. You know, I think every episode really needs to have it. You could even make Snowman a gender fluid character as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be male or female. But then episode 11 part 1 would be Dark Angel. So this would really be like the origin of Donna Troy. So Dark Angel would be creating this mirror twin from Wonder Woman. It'd be basically like a Wonder Woman's reflection, trying to corrupt Donna and make her evil, make her turn and destroy Diana, and ultimately Donna would find her independence and break free and become her own person. And Wonder Woman would be there to stop her. And part 2 would really be about Donna and Wonder Woman teaming up together to take down Dark Angel. That they would ultimately become not only good friends but sisters, and really see that bond together, and show Donna emerging as her own person, not a clone of Wonder Woman, but as her sister. Then we would have season 2, episode 1 would be the Odyssey. Kind of like no, not really a parody, but it would obviously be focused on Cersei. And this episode would really be Cersei versus Wonder Woman. Maybe you would show like a flashback, ancient history between Hippolyta and Cersei, and then we have flash forward to really being Wonder Woman versus Cersei, Diana versus Cersei, and kind of showing that like the Greek pantheons, fighting against Cersei. I think you would have be very close to like this, like very close to having it be kind of like the Odyssey, but Wonder Woman. Then, season 2, episode 3, we have Cheetah Returns. So, after being detained, Wonder Woman tries to help her, but Cheetah ultimately maybe escapes, and is back for blood, back for vengeance. Maybe she's even angrier because Diana's trying to stop her, trying to help her, trying to get rid of her powers. And so Cheetah is like thinking that Diana doesn't want her to be this as powerful as she is, and so ultimately Cheetah doesn't like that, and so they have to go back and forth and fight each other. And then we would have season 2, episode 4, Psychopath. Again, returning Dr. Psycho. He escapes prison, does something. And maybe this time he really plays with Diana's feelings for Cheetah. Maybe this is sort of like almost like a Cheetah and Dr. Psycho team up together, where he really messes with Diana's feelings for Cheetah, that he kind of plays with her mind, and plays with that betrayal, and really makes that come forward. And so Diana kind of like loses her mind and has to kind of come back to reality. Maybe even Donna helps her come back to that reality and comes back to being Diana and having to fight Dr. Psycho again. And also admit her how she feels about Cheetah, how she feels about Barbara. I'm kind of wondering if there's ever going to be a way to really help Barbara, if Barbara will ever be normal again, if she ever come back. Then we have episode 5, Devastation. Really focus on Devastation as a villain, setting her up. Have that Devastation versus Wonder Woman. Episode 6 would focus on Firstborn. Again, we're kind of just going through like the Wonder Woman sort of gallery of rogues, her villains, her people that she has those conflicts with. And a lot of these episodes at this point would be like kind of like one-off, kind of introducing the villain and the story. So then episode 7, we got a war. Focus on Ares. I was sort of making this war come to like really like having this conflict between like human beings, like and ultimately Wonder Woman has to stop him, has to fight him. And no, it would not end in a beheading. It would just be ending with her ultimately defeating Ares and kind of having him like retreat, I guess, or maybe be sent back to Olympus or something. And episode 8, Holy Grail, basically introducing Grail. This will ultimately lead into a crossover episode, which would be season 2, episode 9, For Goodness Sake, introducing Grail and Goodness and the Furies, as well as Big Barda. So ultimately, Wonder Woman would have to team up with Big Barda to take down the Furies. Maybe this part 1 would focus more on Barda and her kind of escaping the Furies, her becoming her own person. And then part 2 would really be Barda and Wonder Woman teaming up, taking down the Furies, taking down Grail and Goodness together. And ultimately, we would have part 2 really be about them taking down the Furies, and then part 3 would really be them it would really be about them taking down Grail and Goodness together and really having to fight that and escape Apocalypse to back to Earth. Then, season 2, episode 12, Olympus Has Fallen. Olympus Has Fallen would be about how a lot of the Greek pantheons have become maybe ill, maybe even perished, maybe Athena's sick. And Zeus would come down to the Amazons, kind of angry, blaming them, maybe. And maybe this would be like an opportunity to show Zeus as kind of a villain, more of his villainous sides. And maybe even Diana has to fight Zeus. And maybe they have a falling out. Maybe they don't really work together. Ultimately, all of this would lead into season 3's storyline, which would be the last storyline that we really talk about. And that is... So, season 3, episode 1, would be about Nemesis. We're gonna introduce Nemesis because we're gonna introduce Nemesis probably through Cersei, kind of showing him as a character. Maybe we show Nemesis and Diana kind of getting along with each other, kind of growing with each other, and maybe Nemesis gets taken by Cersei, and Wonder Woman has to fight her, to free him. Season 3, episode 2 will really be about the Wonder Family's Wonderful Life, kind of playing on that title, but it would be really about showing the different, like, Donna and Artemis and Nubia and probably Cassie as well. Really showing the Wonder Family and how it's grown, how it's kind of teaming up together. Maybe episode 3 would really be about Etta Candy, her work with Argus, and kind of showing her as an independent character, showing how she can be a really good asset to the Wonder Family, and a really strong character as well. And kind of showing her dynamics with Steve as well, how they work together really well, how they able to work with Diana and to really be that Wonder Team, sort of. Then season 3, episode 4 would be like the return to Themyscira. So Diana goes back to Themyscira, kind of, maybe for a few different reasons, kind of finding herself again, wanting to kind of visit her mom, and ultimately she discovers that the Amazons are being attacked by Felix Faust. And so she has to kind of, fight Felix Faust. And maybe that would lead into an ultimate destruction of some of the Amazons, maybe a few deaths, maybe even leading into what would ultimately be the next episode, Paradise Lost, where the Amazons are fallen. Maybe this is kind of a continuation almost of just the Amazons being slaughtered, being attacked, but ultimately having to triumph. But Diana would have to really kind of mourn the loss of a lot of her sisters, and the wonder, like, who should she be more loyal to, the man's world or the Amazons, and kind of almost blaming herself for this even happening, that she wasn't there to protect her sisters. And that will lead into Season 3, Episode 6, In Max We Trust. So, this would be kind of Wonder Woman is still grieving the loss of a lot of her sisters, but she's in man's world. Maybe she's on the Watchtower, and she discovers that Maxwell Lord killed someone. Not just anyone, but a member of the Justice League. That he shot Ted Core and murdered him. And so Diana, having fed up with everything that has happened in the past few episodes, decides to take matters into her own hands and snap the neck of Maxwell Lord. But of course, this moment would be recorded and go viral, and people would no longer trust, no longer idolize Wonder Woman as a character, as a person. They would even question if she's as good as she says she is. And Diana would have to struggle with this. The fact that she's now known as the woman who killed, in cold blood, is basically Maxwell Lord. And then episode 7 would be Undercover, where Diana is now undercover as Diana Prince. The first time that she has to use her secret identity that's not so secret. But she's undercover and playing low-key, teaming up with Nemesis, kind of just working as a secret agent, rather than Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's taking a break because of the whole publicity thing. And ultimately that will lead into Season 3, Episode 8, Who is Wonder Woman? Where we'd see multiple characters trying to take the mantle, whether it be Donna, or Cassie, or Yara, or Artemis, or Nubia. Like, they would all try to kind of basically take the role, take the mantle of Wonder Woman in the place of Diana. And then Season 3, Episode 9 kind of reintroduce Barda again. Maybe because, Wonder Woman is kind of at a loss of what to do. Maybe she goes to the Big Barda. Turns out that Mr. Miracle is kind of missing. Like, Scott has been gone missing, and so they search for Scott together. And maybe Big Barda gives Diana some advice. I mean, she was previously the commander of the Furies, and obviously had to escape that reputation, and had to forge her own path, and maybe she gives some solid advice to Diana, being like, you kind of have to accept that this happened, and you have to decide whether or not you feel like this was the right decision, or whether it was the wrong decision, and you have to kind of take accountability for that. You have to own up to it. You have to either apologize or say, I'm not sorry for killing Maxwell Lord. Maybe even explaining what happened. And really, this would be kind of just Big Barda and Diana really bonding together. And then, I think you guys knew this is where this was heading based on like the plot lines they were covering, but Season 3, Episode 10, Rise of the Olympian. Part 1 would be about how there's this enemy, this mysterious enemy that can actually beat Wonder Woman in a fight, and not only that, but takes her lasso too. Yes, this would be about genocide. And genocide taking down Wonder Woman, ultimately to become a version of her. And maybe even during this, Diana kind of discovers that, you know, so basically the way that you could do it, I mean, you basically just take the comic book. You basically just take the comic book Rise of the Olympian and just tell that story. Because part 2 would really be about the Wonder family kind of teaming up together, kind of fighting, battling genocide, and in the meantime, Wonder Woman is really struggling with the decision that she's made, whether she made the right decision or not, whether she should have killed Maxwell Lord or let him live, or maybe we really see Wonder Woman struggle, really see her lean on her friends, on her people, and maybe the person she ultimately turns to for help the most is Steve Trevor. She turns to Steve, leaning on him for advice, wanting to understand what to do, how she can become Wonder Woman again. And maybe Steve is the person who reminds her why she became Wonder Woman in the first place. And it doesn't matter that she killed someone. It matters that she represents the people of Themyscira. And ultimately, the people of Themyscira are warriors, the Amazon warriors, who don't take no for an answer. And so they ultimately do have to fight genocide and ultimately have to win. And then, part 3, they go back to Themyscira and find out the Acolyte is taking over the island, that they've usurped Hippolyta, and Wonder Woman has to fight her own sisters. Well, not her sisters, but like the rival tribe, you know. And it would really be about finishing this off in a way where Wonder Woman eventually has to just kind of leave Themyscira. And she leaves, and whether she has powers or not, you know, who knows, but ultimately, I think she would decide to be with Steve, to love Steve, to grow up with Steve, maybe even have a kid with Steve. Maybe we even see, if this is truly the end of the show, maybe we even see that jump forward of how she's just kind of living low key. Maybe she's finally found a cure for Barbara. Different kind of things, and you definitely could leave the door open for season 4. I think there's definitely ways to go from Rise of the Olympian to much bigger story arcs. And maybe we actually see an arc of Barbara Minerva becoming human again, finding that cure. But I definitely think that if you're gonna do Wonder Woman the animated series, I feel like Rise of the Olympian has to be one of those storylines that you really tell towards the end of the show, because otherwise, like I think there are a few storylines that are really important for the animated series to cover, and I would say Rise of the Olympian is one of them, but also probably Wonder Woman Historia, and there's like a couple of others that I would throw in there as well. Like, definitely George Perez. Like, George Perez is kind of obvious. Like, if you're going to do the origin of Wonder Woman, you go with the George Perez route. And there's definitely a lot of villains that you could have cameo. You could have like a little episode for. Doesn't always have to be this like one constant thing. I definitely think if you go the Superman animated series route where it kind of builds off of each other, but is ultimately its own kind of story, I think that's where you can get it. I think you can also have like different characters show up. Like you have Black Canary show up at some point. You can have like Vixen show up at some point. You could have like different characters kind of featured in Wonder Woman the animated series, just like Superman the animated series had those characters too. And ultimately, it kind of has a lot of different ways to go about it. But let me know what you guys think of these ideas down in the comments below. Did you like my ideas? Obviously, there's a lot of stories, a lot of different directions you can go for. I think having Steve and Diana falling in love later on in the series is kind of a fun concept, because it's like, at the end of the day, these two are great friends. They work well with each other. But they don't have to love each other until they're ready. Until they're both ready to take that step, to move into that, and become a true couple. Maybe get married together. Maybe have kids together. Whatever. It's like, as long as you have that sort of relationship development, I think it'd be really good. You know, I think when you don't have that relationship development, and when you do them too early, when you kind of rush into the story, I don't think it makes, like, for a really long series. Like, I think we can do that if you only plan to do, like, a couple of seasons. But you really need to show them really grow into each other, love each other, and be with each other. And I think by going this kind of route, how at the very end, you know, Diana is leaning on Steve. She is going to Steve for advice, to understand, like, everything, because everything is just going to shit. And she needs that person who truly understands her, who found her before she was Wonder Woman, who was able to work with her and know her as a person. The sisters, the Amazon sisters, they know her as the little girl that grew up on the island. You know, they're very protective of her. You know, the people, they know her as the hero, the Wonder Woman, you know. But Steve is like the only one who truly knows her as Diana, who truly got to know her before she was really anyone. And I think that is what makes the difference between a really good, like, Wonder Trev and, like, kind of like a mediocre Wonder Trev. It's like, you really need to show how Steve is different from everyone else. But ultimately, I hope you guys enjoyed those ideas. Again, they're just fun ideas. But, who knows? Maybe they'll actually happen. Leave a like on this video. Tell me what you would want to see in the animated series. And subscribe for more content like this. Thank you guys for watching. This has been the DC Overlord, signing out.